Oh, okay, we are live. Tonight on the Vince Dow Show, Antifa tries to shut down a Charlie Kirk event at UC Davis and then gets absolutely mogged by, I kid you not, one guy in shorts. Okay, Antifa gets mogged by one dude wearing shorts. We will play you the footage. Also, I will be responding to this very woke Native American guy. That'll be quite the segment. It'll be quite spicy. You're going to want to stick around for that. And we will have our first ever guest in the history of the show joining us. Reporter Savanah Hernandez, host of Sav Says. Many of you guys, as I can see in chat, know who she is. She will be joining us to discuss the footage from UC Davis. That's all coming up tonight on the Vince Dow Show. Don't go anywhere. And we are live from the great state of Florida. Welcome to the Vince Dow Show. I am your host, Vince Dow. And before we begin, everyone be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are doing this show live every night at 8 p.m. Eastern time during the week. So be sure to join us nightly here for the Vince Dow Show. Before I begin and while we wait for people to pour in and get notified about the stream, let me say hi to some of our chat here. So we got Zachary is joining the Dow Pack General membership tier. Thank you very much, Zachary. Welcome to the membership. Again, you can join the channel membership for exclusive perks. Shout out. So let's see. So let's just say hi to some of our people here. Shout out Burgundy Blue, Chesscom Support, Jonathan Fields, Unicorn, Melonhead, Zeb, and many such others. And let's just do this. Let me give a shout out to a few different states around the country. So if you're watching the stream from these states, shout out to you. Let's say shout out to Alabama, Texas, Vermont, Montana, and Nevada. Okay, so if you're watching us in those states, shout out to you. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Let me see how many likes we have in the chat. We got 36 likes. Let's get that up to 50 likes in the next few minutes here. And if you want to support the show, or if you have a question or comment that you want absolutely read and answered, feel free to send in a super chat. A super chat is the best way to support me and support the show. Keep the lights on in the studio. And it's also the best way to get your comment and question read and answered. I will be checking the super chats periodically throughout, in between every single segment, and then if we don't get to it, then I will do a Q&A portion reading the super chats at the end of the stream. So again, if you want to support the show, feel free to send in a super chat. It is appreciated in advance. God bless. All right. So with that said, before I start, let me check the time. What time is it? It's the hour of Dow. Let Dow time commence. Let Vinsanity commence. Folks, let's get right into the news tonight. Well, we kick off by showing you something that you may not have seen for a few months, which is Antifa protesting conservative speakers on college campuses. Now, back when Trump was president, this was a very regular occurrence. We saw this seemingly every day, but haven't seen it for a few years. But this Tuesday, Charlie Kirk gave a speech at UC Davis, that's up in California, and he drew an angry mob of, a decent amount. I mean, that's at least 50 Antifa people there. And it seems to me, we saw this with Michael Knowles at Buffalo the other week. It seems to me that these big college protests and riots that have not been around for a few years are now back. Now, why is it back? Why are the leftists out in public once again angry at us? Well, we can have the conspiracies about why that is. Maybe George Soros is funding it, or Biden, or Newsom, or something. But this might be a hot take with people. I actually don't know if that's the primary reason. I think there is actually an organic and genuine outrage that is once again rising against conservatives. And the reason for that is not a bad reason. It's because conservatives are once again starting to be effective in the culture war. And we'll discuss that in a little bit here with our guest, Savanah Hernandez. But you look at the cultural impact of recent stuff like What is a Woman, right? The Matt Walsh documentary, that was a huge cultural phenomenon. You look at Michael Knowles last week, right? He said what he said, and then look what happened. Huge crowd of protesters. Our side is beginning to make waves. And why is our side beginning to make waves? Our side is beginning to make waves because we are actually starting to be bold in the culture war. When it turns out you don't do the strategy of being nice and playing Mr. Nice Guy all the time and actually go on offense and actually be bold enough to tell the truth, you do draw some pretty strong opposition. Anyways, that brings us here to our featured story, Antifa protesting Charlie Kirk. And it was more than a protest, as you'll see. They blocked the way for people trying to enter. As you can see here, they harassed them. So what you see right now, they actually came up to the crowd and were harassing them. They vandalized property. They smashed windows. Savanah, again, will join us momentarily to discuss more of that. But before we do that, I want to show you this one clip because it's honestly hilarious. So you have this crowd of like 30 Antifa guys, and they're all blocking the way. Okay, so they're blocking the way so you can't enter, you can't get into the event. And then this one Chad, okay, is literally just one guy. I want to reiterate that. You see the crowd right here. One guy just shows up. He's wearing shorts. He looks like he just came from the gym, and he just punks them and mogs all of them. Now, before we play this clip, let me be clear. Since we are on YouTube, I disavow violence, okay? And I don't know if what you will see even constitutes violence. I don't think it legally constitutes assault or whatever, but regardless, okay, he does shove one of the Antifa guys. I disavow that, okay? I don't endorse putting your hands on people. Again, YouTube, okay, I'm not encouraging this. Now, with that said, it should be understood in context. They were blocking his way and then seemingly making many violent threats to him as well. But again, I disavow, don't put your hands on people. Okay, TOS, YouTube, you hear that? I don't endorse this. And by the way, graphic language warning for the video you're about to see. But just check this out. Just to prove a point about Antifa, check out this video you were about to see.
What's up? Fuck you!
So they're blocking his way again in context. And then he just is like, nope, I'm going through.
Hey, get the fuck out, you asshat! We'll fuck you up! Hey, fuck you! I'm like a pussy! You forgot my day, Hey, only gay! Only gay, Joe! You look so dumb.
Again, excuse the language. I didn't have time to censor it, but as you can see, one guy, okay, one guy again in shorts, okay, he's wearing shorts, just absolutely mogs and terrifies all of them. Again, I don't avow the shove, but it really does go to show you how sad these people are. They're blocking the way. They're like, you're not coming through. Thou shalt not pass. And then one dude shows up speaking English instead of speaking soy, and it absolutely terrifies all of them. And that's why this episode is titled Leftist Soy, because again, notice how they're very vehement. You're not coming through. We're shutting down the event. We're blocking it. And then one dude gets through. And then notice he says, he even like challenges them. Again, I'm not supporting this. I'm not saying, you know, fighting bad YouTube, okay, disavow. But he stands there and says, hey, bring it on. Come on, tough guys. Like let's do it. And of like 30 or more people there, not a single one obviously is brave enough, which I'm not saying they should have accepted the challenge. Again, violence is bad, but it just goes to prove a point. These people act so tough with all of their umbrellas and masks and all of that, but then when one dude who looks like he just came from the gym is like, what's up? You know, they cave and they fold. So again, not saying he should have shoved them. I'm saying that for the millionth time because YouTube, you know, but again, very strong and buff Antifa guy absolutely mogs a bunch of Antifa losers. And then you have this one video of a girl twerking on the attendees, okay? Because that is just absolutely owning them epic style. This is how you protest, and this is how you spread a message. Let's take a look. So there she is in her mask. She looks like she also grabbed her, you know what. So that's political protest. Apparently, that's how you resist fascism. I don't know. Okay, Well, with more details on the story, earlier today, I interviewed the guest of tonight, Savanah Hernandez, host of Sav Says. Now, I do want to warn the audience before we actually play the interview, because some of you guys might get mad at this, okay? So I got to warn everyone. All right, listen up. Kids, listen up. The audio is fine. My video is fine. Her video is a little bit laggy on this interview, as you'll see, okay? Now, I hope... And most of you guys, it seems like, are here to listen to the interview and listen to the guests. So I hope we can get through the whole thing, right? I hope it's watchable enough for you guys. Again, the audio is fine. So if it's really off-putting, you can just look away and listen to it. The audio is fine. But the video is very, very laggy on her part. It's fine on my part, okay? And that is my fault. I'm sorry, okay? It's actually not her fault. It's my fault. But first week of the show, okay, we're still getting the tech together. So excuse me, okay? Excuse the boomer tech, but that is the case. So here's what I'll do. Just in case, as a contingency plan, if it's too off-putting for you guys to watch, let me know, and then I'll if I see viewership, especially like dropping massively, I'll just cut the interview short, and then we'll go on to the next segment, and then I'll upload the whole interview for like channel members or something. Okay, I'll figure something out. But hopefully it is watchable and consumable for you guys. But anyways, we bring in next the guest for tonight, Savanah Hernandez, first ever guest in the history of the show to discuss the footage. Well, joining us as our first ever guest on the show actually is Savanah Hernandez. She runs the YouTube channel Sav Says. She is a reporter for Turning Point USA and the source of the footage for this event. So, Sav, thanks for coming on the show.
Vince, I'm so honored that I'm the first guest. I had no idea. I'm nervous now. This is a lot of responsibility.
Thanks for coming on. And yeah, you are the first guest. So, it seems to me like we have not seen this type of stuff since Trump was president, right? You've seen some left-wing people do stuff, but these sort of like mass-scale protests on college campuses against conservative speakers, the violence, obviously people were smashing windows. Tell me, why do you think that is? Why do you think it is now that you're suddenly seeing like Antifa and stuff come back on college campuses? Because I personally think it's because conservatives in many ways are becoming effective in the culture war. Like, you see What Is a Woman and a lot of the based laws that a lot of red states are passing. I think we're starting to actually be effective, and that's why they're pissed. But tell me, why do you think suddenly we're seeing this rise again?
Well, I agree with you on both of those points. One, election year is coming up quickly. We saw that Donald Trump already made the announcement that he will be running in 2024. And we already are seeing people like Michelle Obama coming forward and saying, oh, I cried for 30 minutes when Trump was inaugurated. It was so horrible. So we're already seeing that rhetoric against Donald Trump. We're seeing the media continuing to blame modern day issues like the train derailment in East Palestine or the banking crisis that we're currently going through on Donald Trump. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is exactly what you said. Conservative speakers are becoming more and more effective, and we are starting to reach a broader subset of people because of the fact that the left has gotten so out of hand, especially with transgenderism. Now, the Sacramento Bee had spread an allegation that Charlie Kirk, who was speaking at UC Davis this past Tuesday, spread violent rhetoric against the trans community, and that's why he needed to be stopped. Because again, as we all know, with the Antifa types with the left, if you don't believe with their ideology 100%, you're a fascist, Nazi, bigot, every single name in the book. So of course they had to go in and shut him down. And I'm glad you're playing that clip as well of that line of people that were waiting to get into the speech and the Antifa members descending upon them. What people are watching right here is domestic terrorism, okay? And I'm labeling it as such, Vince, because as I was reporting on this event towards the end of the night, I did get found out and I was being hunted down by these people. I'm a journalist and I for sure have an opinion, but when I'm going out and reporting on these events, it's very much point and shoot, give a neutral caption, and let the people view the footage for themselves and come up with their own opinion about what they think is happening based on what you're seeing in the footage. And of course, the Antifa members did not like that because they were committing violent and terroristic acts. They were breaking windows. They were attacking people. They were trying to impede on constitutional rights, like my freedom of the press to be there and to film an actual news event. So just a little bit of a, quick tangent on what I saw there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I notice I know campus police showed up later, but for a while it seems like these Antifa people come up to the attendees and there's no preparations for that, right? There's no police around there. And you know, we've seen many cases where Antifa is violent. Luckily, that didn't happen towards the attendees. But did you kind of get that feeling that UC Davis wasn't really actually protecting the safety of the people in attendance and kind of leaving them to the mob, if you will?
I feel that they were protecting those in attendance once they got into the building. But like you said, there wasn't very good preparation for this mob descending on this crowd of people that, again, were just standing in line waiting to get into the event. The protesters, or the Antifa mob, actually started about 2 hours prior to the event, and they were blocking this bikeway, right? So you have all of these college students that are trying to bike down the campus, and they were having to go off down a hill into this little trench on the side of the bike path because Antifa was blocking the entire pathway for both students, for both attendees. They were trying to shut them down from being able to access any entrance at all. So honestly, I don't think that the police were prepared. And I did hear from sources on the ground that the reason why the police weren't pushing back against them too much was because they didn't want the Antifa members to turn on the police and then start directing violence towards police. Because to be quite honest with you, Vince, I was right there and I got one of the clips of them breaking the windows in for one of the buildings. And what did the police do? They retreated. They ran and hid. They didn't use pepper spray. They didn't try to disperse these students. They let them break the windows. And then when the students saw that a line of police were coming, then the students, or the Antifa members, I guess, because it was a mix of both, then they began to retreat. But did the police go in? Did they try to go arrest anybody? No, absolutely not. They let them break the windows and they let them continue to protest.
So did you see any arrests made that day? Because, you know, because you see the cops, yeah, and you're right, it is a pathetic performance on their part because a lot of them were like retreating into the building and just watching them. And then there's that one video you have of the where there's a person behind him spray painting, like vandalizing the school, and the cops are basically just standing there. Did you see any arrests? Did you see anything on that front?
I did see a couple of arrests. Funny enough, that clip that you did bring up, that person was arrested for vandalizing the building. But again, when it to the mob descending upon this building, that never should have happened. Also, I'd like to note that once Antifa did find me out, I was lucky enough to have retreated from the mob at that point. But I went up to police officers and I said, hey, I'm a journalist. I was reporting on this event. Here's my press pass with the tpusa logo on it. I actually work for the company that's inside holding this event right now. Can you please help me? Because that mob that is coming this way is hunting me down. They turned me away and said good luck.
Wow. Yeah, it's anarcho-tyranny, right? All right, so let's transition here a bit. I know you've been doing a lot of great work with a lot of different street content, and you recently had this clip go viral of you asking this guy about white privilege at UT Austin. So let's play it here.
I grew up as a white man, and you're the exact opposite, you know? And so it's like my experiences are going to be different from yours.
How come?
I think, you know, there's a thing of, like, white privilege.
What privileges do you have that I don't have?
Oh, see, that's the question I keep asking myself because, like, in this day and age, like, all the laws, I say all the laws, you know, it's hard to speak on something I'm not fully knowledgeable of, so, like, I'm sorry if I, like, make a mistake in saying this, but it's
Don't you think it's a problem in society when white people think that they have more privileges than brown or black people?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the agenda that's pushed off because personally, it's like, not that I think I'm more privileged than anyone else because I had to work to get where I was, and that's like the...
So why do you have that mentality immediately where you know, kind of apologize to me, like, let's talk about privilege, let's talk about I'm a white man in America, so we could have grown up differently.
Got you.
Why is that your first initial reaction to me as a brown woman?
Wow, you're getting me good. See, these are the kind of conversations that I love having. And I think it comes from a place of, like, I wouldn't say caution, but, like, in this day and age, people are so quick to judge and react and cancel. And so I guess it's that like, caution to go into an interview like this. I'm like, I don't know where we're at, but now I know where we're at, and I can, like, go for real.
It's funny how he kind of implicitly acknowledges that he knows what's wrong with the system, right? He knows he's very quick to be canceled and that the system in many ways is biased against white guys, which is why he is so scared. Sav, why do you think it is that people like this are so terrified to even say anything remotely normal or sane or common sense?
Well, it's because of our education system, Vince. It's because they've been indoctrinated since their youth and told that white men are bad, that they have privileges, that black and brown people are oppressed, that minorities cannot make it in the United States of America, that the KKK and racism are running so rampant on our streets, that we have minorities living in fear for their lives, which is just absolutely not true. And Vince, you and I are a great testament to this. We are basically the American dream, right? We are minorities in this country that we're able to have our freedom of speech, able to utilize all of the opportunity in this country to absolutely make it. So I'm very tired of our education system indoctrinating and brainwashing our youth into thinking that they're victims if they're minorities, that if they're white people, that they are bad. You can't choose the color of the skin that you're born with, but you can choose the mindset that you have, especially in countries like the United States of America. Now, Vince, I have read a lot about what it's like to live under an oppressive regime like North Korea. Those people are truly oppressed. Do you think that if they spoke out against the government that they wouldn't immediately be killed? That's what the average American thinks. Well, minority American thinks is going to happen to them if they speak out against the government, if they fight for racial justice, if they try to make it in America. They think that they're so oppressed and they're so victimized that this entire system is keeping them down, when in fact, it's the exact opposite. If you are a minority in this country, let's, for example, trying to get into a prestigious school, if you're black or brown, you have a higher percentage and it's much easier for you to get into these prestigious universities because of your skin tone. If you're white or Asian, not as easy. So just another testament and example in our society is, and I'm tired of white people apologizing for their skin tone. I'm tired of them acting like they have these privileges that everybody else in the same country does not have and do not have. So again, that's why it's important for us to go and have these students critically think about what they're saying, because it's all propaganda that has been drilled into their brains over years.
Yeah, it's so true. And, I think obviously you're right. There is a high degree of mobility in America. But a concern I actually have is that is starting to slip away and dissipate in the opposite direction. Because when I look at, things like affirmative action and the diversity quotas and all this stuff, I wouldn't even say, or at least it's getting to the point where America is not really like an equal society, rather that there is actually an institutional bias against white people. Would you agree with that? Do you think we're culturally moving to the point where it's not even a level playing field anymore, but they're starting to build a very strong bias actually against the white people?
Absolutely, Vince. We have on college campuses events where it's brown and black people only. Whites not allowed. Whites don't come to this event because of your privileges, because we don't like you. We have so many American minorities that will actively call white people animals, call for them to be killed, call them subhuman, and they don't face the consequences as, let's say, a white person who reversed that rhetoric would have. So there is inherent bias against the white community in the United States of America. And we are seeing racism against white people. And it's very sad to see. And that's why it's important for, again, and you know what, Vince, I don't even like using the term minority. I think it's ridiculous. I view everybody as an American because we all have the same rights. We all have the same opportunities. Granted, not everybody starts off on the same foot. But if white privilege really was this issue that was embedded in society, then explain poor white people. Why is it that we had a black president? Why is it that we have black CEOs in this country? Explain that to me if we have such an institutionalized racism against brown and black people here in the United States.
Yeah, and it is true, right? You're sort of, I know you went to East Palestine recently. Your average East Palestine white person living there has very little institutional power. Society is not actively working in favor of them. And it's so true. All right, well, thank you for coming on the show, Sav. You're doing great work. And really quickly tell the audience where they can find you.
Thank you so much for having me, Vince. Go follow me on YouTube at Sav Says, on Twitter at Sav_says_, and Instagram at Sav with one N. Also my website, savsaysofficial.com. Sorry, I have a lot of places you can follow me.
All right. Be sure to do that, chat. Thanks for coming on. All right. Well, thank you again, Savanah, for coming on the show. She's our first guest. She broke the ice, actually, as our very first guest on the show. So thank you very much for coming on, Sav. And it is insane. She actually just broke that news today that she went up to the police at UC Davis and asked for help, and they basically left her on her own. And, you know, luckily Antifa was slightly less violent in this case, but we have seen what happens. But anyways, thank you very much for coming on the show. Sav, we will go on to the next segment here in a second, but really quickly, let me check the super chats. I know we got a few, so I'll check those out, and then we'll go on to the second segment that you won't want to miss tonight, which is my response to this woke Native American guy. Okay, don't miss it. But anyways, let me really quickly read the super chats here. Gotta scroll to the top. Okay, Zorkoth 88 says nothing in this world. Okay, we're on YouTube. Thank you for the 5, but I'm saying that because of YouTube TOS. Okay, I mean, also if I got deplatformed, then I would be very hard pressed to change anything either. Just to explain. So okay, that's why I say disavow, you know, etc. Okay, but thank you very much for the $5. God bless you. Zeb for $5 says, glad you were able to have Sav on. So true. We will have more guests on the show. I don't want to make the show entirely reliant on guests because, as you can kind of tell, we have a very good solo dynamic going, and I don't really want that to change. I don't want to turn into one of those podcasts that's only known for interviewing people, because then it's like your own podcast has no identity. Who are you? Nobody cares, right? Like Joe Rogan. I mean, some people are genuine fans of Joe Rogan, but most of the time people watch Joe Rogan for the guests. I don't want to become that show, but we will have guests on periodically. So comment right now, chat. Let me know some guests you want to see on the show. Okay, let me know some guests you want to see in the future. Brendan for $5 says, God bless everyone in chat. Love every single one of you. Love every single one of you too, and love you too, Brendan Crespin. May God bless everyone in this chat. Aiden Wheeler for $5. Thank you very much. God bless you. Says, I'm a big fan, but I think we all want to know, is a date with John Doyle ever going to happen between John Doyle and Savanah Hernandez? Much love. Thank you very much for the $5, Aiden. God bless you. No comments. No comments. I'm not going to comment on that. Thank you very much for the 5. Dollar for $20. Let's go. Huge donation. Says, what's up, Vince? I'm going to transfer to Liberty next year once I get my associate's degree, because they have an aviation program. Well, congratulations. And also, you should start saying hour for dower at the start of your show. God bless. Have a good day. God bless you too, and you have a good day too. Yeah, you know, if you graduate from Liberty with aviation degree, maybe I'll trust your flying abilities, and then maybe we can actually get in that plane. But thank you very much. Should I start saying hour for dower? I feel like that's a little bit trying too hard, but let me know in the chat if you like that. Thank you very much for the huge $20 donation. Thank you, dollar for dollar, and good luck in your next endeavors at Liberty. Zorkoth says, my bad, man. Didn't mean to sound overly hostile. You're all good. Thank you very much for the $5, Zorkoth. Burgundy Blue for $20. Another Burgundy Blue says, I'm really enjoying the convo, Vince, but I would say that there are people who are disadvantaged because of where they live in the U.S., like white Appalachians or rural blacks, so the government should try to invest more in these areas. Thank you very much for the $20, Burgundy Blue. Appreciate it. Big donation. And yeah, that's true too. I mean, there's a level, different ways in which certain people are disadvantaged. What we're just saying is that the blanket statement that like all white people have an advantage, I would argue very few to actually none of white people have an institutional advantage. But it is also true. Yes, the rural areas of America are largely forgotten and underdeveloped, and you see this when you drive the roads in Ohio. You see this in East Palestine. Obviously, the government response. Yeah, nobody cares about the small towns. Nobody cares about the rural folk. And obviously, as we can both probably agree on, in many ways, small towns are the lifeline and the heart of America, right? So thank you very much for the $20 big donation from Burgundy Blue. God bless you. Aiden Wheeler for $2 says, I support the hour for dower motto. Well, thank you very much for the $2. God bless you, Aiden. And we'll think about it. We'll think about it. God bless you too, Burgundy Blue. All right. That wraps up the super chat segment. From now, we will go on to the next segment, but this is the last segment of the show I'm about to do. So if you want segments, if you want super chats read right after we do this segment, be sure to send them in now, and then we'll have a backlog once we actually start the Q&A. Although we just got one right now, so I'll read this one. Brendan Cressman for $5 says, I also support the Hour for Dower motto. $W. Thank you very much for the $5. I don't know. You guys might have to bribe me, okay? Cause I'm kind of mixed on that slogan, but it's like if people are sending money saying they want, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Like rip you guys off? I'll think about it. We will strongly consider this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll on with our next segment here. Let's go to our dumb leftist take of the day. Seems like every day we either get one from Twitter or TikTok, which is fairly normal. But here we go. Dumb leftist take of the day. We have a tweet from Lakota Man. He's like this Native American leftist on Twitter. I actually went back and forth with him like years ago, but he tweeted out this week saying that there's this meme here saying that America is stolen land, shows a Native American, built by people who were stolen from their land, showing a black person. Now, there are many angles from which we could debunk this meme and debunk both the arguments that America's on stolen land or that America was built by slavery. On the slavery front, we'll start there. We could go into the fact that slavery only contributed to one part of the regional American economy for one period of time, right? And so you could say, well, slavery had a contribution in the antebellum South, perhaps, but slaves were not building everything that we see around us, including even in the modern South, right? The roads you drive on, the house you live in, the infrastructure you use, the culture that you consume, none of this at any point was built by slave labor. It is not factually accurate to say that slaves built America. It simply isn't correct. And even when slavery did exist, there is a strong argument to be made that far from the perspective that slavery built America, in many ways, slavery actually held America back from a functional perspective. There is a reason why historic movements like the Free Soil movement were popular at the time, because slavery was perhaps beneficial and convenient for a very small subset of the southern population, right? The plantation owners. But in many ways, slave labor was actually overall less efficient on the American economy than free labor, as some economists have argued. We did a video a few months ago talking about that. But even further, I would point to the fact that even if you want to look at America at the time, the North, as we know, was more economically dominant than the South. And you could argue that there are many reasons for that, more reasons than slavery, sure. But there is a reason why Northerners, the more economically profitable part of the country at the time, found free labor to be actually more practical and cost efficient than slave labor. Even further, I would point to the fact that America's commonly accepted golden age, right? So when Americans think of Americana, when we think of the golden age of America, nobody thinks of the 1830s or the 1850s. The commonly accepted golden era for our country was from the 1920s to about the 1980s, 1990s, right? All of which happened long after slavery. So it is simply not accurate to argue that slaves built America. No, they didn't. The country you look around and see today, everything around you that you see today was not built by slaves. Now, on to the argument of stolen land, right? America stole the land from Native Americans. First of all, this argument is simply irrelevant. It has no bearing on modern day politics. Okay, white settlers conquered Indians hundreds of years ago. Newsflash, welcome to world history. The fact of the matter, and as brutal as it is, and maybe as perhaps not even morally correct as it is, but the sheer reality and fact of human history is that land, frankly, is the property of he who can control and defend it. We can, of course, talk about the morals of who should own what, but those morals can only be enforced by force, right? By the ability to control and defend that land. And the fact of the matter is that white settlers did conquer this land, and the American nation that they settled and constructed is the ruling entity of this land today. It is what it is. Welcome to planet Earth. And secondly, this argument is contradictory. It's very contradictory because when white civilizations say that they want to protect the sovereignty of historically white lands, what would they say about that in response, right? What would a leftist say? If, for instance, a English person said that if an English person said that England is an Anglo-Saxon nation on Anglo-Saxon land, and therefore we need to stop non-Anglo-Saxons from living here and stop them from taking over the population and stuff. Again, if a British Anglo-Saxon person living in Britain said this, what would you call that? What would the left call that? What would Lakota Man say to that? They would call that alt-right, neo-Nazi, white nationalist. That's what they call it when white people hypothetically say the same thing, right? If a European person says that they want to keep Europe for European people, that's what they would call it. Okay? Just pointing out the standard here. Yet when Native Americans try to stake a historical claim on this continent, that, by the way, is far more outdated and less grounded, suddenly they become the good guys and suddenly their cause becomes noble. What's the difference? This argument is further contradictory with a basic understanding of Native American civilization. Newsflash, if you say that conquest is stealing land, then natives all stole land from each other. We all know this. And it's especially funny because, as you can see, right, this tweet comes from a Twitter account called Lakota Man. Okay? So let's break that down, Lakota Man, because sure, we can make blanket vague statements like, the natives all conquered each other, but I think it would be a much more effective argument to teach Lakota Man the history lesson of his own tribe, the Lakota Sioux. If you know anything about the Lakota Sioux, they, even among Native Americans, had an special reputation that was feared by other natives and obviously feared by the white settlers of conquest, brutality, and mass genocide. Those were your ancestors, Lakota Man, if we want to bring ancestors into this. The Lakota were a war tribe, known for constantly engaging themselves in bloodshed and even building a brief empire at the time based on, guess what? The conquest of other tribes. As just one example, I present to you the story of the Lakota conquest over the Black Hills. This is especially noteworthy, and I bring this up because of the Mount Rushmore controversy, right? Mount Rushmore is in the Black Hills, and if you remember, back in 2020, when President Trump did a speech at Mount Rushmore, many Lakota activists were saying that the Black Hills are stolen land, we need to take down Mount Rushmore, give it back to the Lakota, colonization, etc., etc. You may remember, if you were following politics at the time, this whole Mount Rushmore debate was a very big thing, and to this day, among the many Lakota activists like himself, this is still a big debate. Yet, as we point out, the Lakota actually stole that land from other Indians. As historian Jerome Green points out in American Carnage, Wounded Knee 1890, his book, the Lakota's pursuit of the Black Hills, again, this is where Mount Rushmore is, the Lakota's pursuit of the Black Hills was marked by violence and bloodshed. The Cheyenne, as well as other tribes, were caught in the crossfire of Lakota campaigns to seize, aka steal, quote unquote, the gold-rich hills. Lakota warriors often mounted hit-and-run raids on Cheyenne villages and hunting camps, killing men, women, and children, and taking horses and other property. Over time, the violence escalated as more and more Lakotas sought to gain control of the area. And as further described by historian Robert Utley, the Sioux, the Lakota Sioux, were determined to have the Black Hills, and they were willing to use any means necessary to achieve their goal. Interesting. They destroyed the Arapaho, nearly exterminated the Cheyenne, and left a trail of death, destruction, and human misery across the plains. The Cheyenne fought with a great deal of courage and determination, but they were eventually forced to surrender and accept the Sioux's term. The Black Hills were ceded to the Lakota Sioux, and the Cheyenne were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Isn't that interesting? It is a member of this tribe who is now lecturing modern Americans about stealing their land in the 1800s. when their largely entire legacy as a tribe is quote-unquote stealing land. Now, I don't use that term because, like, stealing implies what, you came in the night and just live there? No, that's like squatting. I think there's a difference. Conquest, but again, this is the terminology, stealing land. As I will reiterate, and as these historians point out, again, even of the Native American tribes, the Lakota Sioux have a special track record of brutality and conquest. And in comparison to a lot of the other tribes on this continent, that is saying a lot. To further demonstrate the brutality of the Lakota Sioux, we read from accounts of Richard Henry Pratt. Quote, "The warriors in making their attacks were not content with mere killing, but found a special joy in taking scalps. They did not spare the women or children in their attacks, and their very love for war and scalping made them merciless." The Sioux were celebrated for their brutal and cowardly manner of warfare. They took advantage of every opportunity to ambush small parties of whites, to burn, destroy, and murder. Their lust for blood, the war dance, and the scalp dance all had their effect among the young. Blah, blah, blah. This heathen dance in which the Indian tortures his own flesh and that of others is very harmful to the mind and body. Blah, blah, blah. We continue. You get the point. Okay? Graphic, I'm sorry. Maybe I should have put a disclaimer on that. It is a little bit graphic details, but I just want to prove a point. This is the guy accusing Americans, modern Americans, of stealing his land. This is the guy claiming that. Again, I'm not attacking the guy personally, right? He's not, he's not his ancestors. Modern Americans are not their ancestors. They're the modern people, right? But if he's going to bring up this whole ancestral argument, hey, your ancestors, Mr. Lakota man, at least by modern standards, I don't know what your moral standards are, but at least by our modern standards, we're not exactly the noblest and nicest and most innocent people. The land that you claim was supposedly stolen from your tribe actually took from other tribes and achieved equal or maybe even worse, arguably, levels of brutality there. Now, with all of this information in mind, let me go further to make a case that might be a little bit controversial, just a little bit, but still nonetheless true, which is that, and again, maybe a hot take here, but the European settlement and conquest of the Americas was actually a net positive in world history and ought to be something that is viewed, at least in a net sense, of being a positive thing, not a negative thing. We tend to have this approach even as conservatives of saying like, oh, well, colonization was bad, but it is what it is. We can't fix it now. We can't rectify it now. But why actually was it bad, though? Genuine question. I mean, sure, this is not to deny that there were brutal things that European settlers did, as did many natives, very often to a worse extent. Welcome to warfare. Welcome to conquest. But as people hundreds of years later, we really ought to look back and objectively analyze how the European settlement of America was actually quite a good thing for this land, because Europeans, whatever, people killed each other. Again, that's history, that's human history. But as a result of it, the Europeans did not leave just mass destruction in their wake. Actually, they brought things like order, stability, technology, and frankly, let me put this very bluntly, civilization, at least in our understanding of it, to this land. And as a matter of fact, Europeans, again, criticize them whatever you will, but they actually ended the brutal practices like scalping, like human sacrifice among the Aztecs, and gave us the sort of modern ethics that we now judge history on today. And most importantly to me as a Christian, Europeans brought Christianity and the gospel to this land and to the natives, which is, in my opinion, the most important and positive byproduct of colonization. Are we too seriously? I mean, let's just ask this honestly, okay? And I know it's not politically correct to say. The politically correct answer, even among conservatives, is to say, oh, well, it was bad, but, what are we going to do about it now? No, I'm going to ask this question. Are we really to look at the Lakota lands of today and say that our world would be a better place without, American settlement on those lands? Hot take maybe, but I would say that at least, as in the lens of modern people, we ought to view the colonists and settlers as heroes. Maybe not perfect heroes, but heroes nonetheless. And every time that I see running electricity and water in my house, the fact that I see, oh, look, I have this computer here in North America and we're able to do this stream, I have functional roads I can drive on. I don't hear about scalpings happening very often. I am reminded of how grateful I am, actually, that European settlers prevailed over the Native Americans, okay? That's just... Look, let me put it this way for people who are about this, okay? What I am saying is that, okay, one people conquered another people. Welcome to human history. That has always happened. That happened among natives. That happened among white people for a long time. It is what it is. But what was the net result of that? The net result of that, you could argue, the European conquest of the Americas specifically and the creation of the United States. You know, that's no different from any other conquest in history. But you could argue, without the parallels of like maybe just the Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, stuff like that, actually had like the most net positive effects on civilization and human history as a result of, you know, the supposed conquest. And so just point being, we really ought to change the narratives here, okay? In an objective sense, the American settlers, make whatever criticisms of them you will, but they were actually a net positive force. And again, if you woke up to running water and electricity today, you ought to thank Columbus, you ought to thank, you know, the American settlers, you ought to thank the British, all of that, for these things and not Native American civilizations. Just saying, as a message to Lakota man. All right, anyways, well, that wraps up our news segments for tonight, so we will go on to Q&A. I'll read the super chats for about 15 minutes here, and we will call it a night. I know we got quite a few super chats while I was talking, so let's go and read those. Let's go to Super Chats here. We got some big donations. Brendan Crespin for $10. Thank you very much. Says, comments on this. Number one, slavery ended in 1863 or 1865. Depends on how you view the end of the Civil War or the Emancipation. But it ended. Stop complaining and learn from it. I know it was evil. Thank you very much for the $10, Brendan Crespin. It is true. But again, yes, it had no contributing aspect to any of really the actually like golden eras of American civilization, like I said. And, you know, frankly, even at the time, the contribution of slavery to like the building of America is vastly overstated and exaggerated by these revisionists. So thank you very much for the $10, Brendan Crespin. God bless you. Appreciate the support. We got another $10 from Brendan. Says, number two, you can't hold people from the 17 and 1800s to today's societal standards. It was wrong nonetheless, but you can't hold them to our standards. Thank you very much, Brendan Crespin. I would go so far as to say yeah, maybe in some ways we objectively are, but as a whole, are we even that morally superior to the people back then? Because, yeah, sure, we are a little bit more civilized in some regards. I'm not denying that. But then I would also argue there are regards in which we are arguably we are arguably less moral than they are. And it is so true. You know, we do stand on the, at the top of the mountain that they built, right? This is obviously true. And it is also true, like I said, that at the time, conquest and kind of power has always just been the simple rule of human history and human nature, okay? These ideas were never exclusive to white European people, okay? Like I said earlier, and like we explained with the history of the Lakota Sioux, the natives were conquering each other as well. Sure, the Europeans, the American whites and stuff, they had technology, they had strategy, they had more functional, things that allowed them to conquer to a very large scale and mass sense. But the concept is still the same, okay? And then when you actually look at a lot of the practices, again, of these Native Americans, historically, of course, it actually turns out that the alleged brutality might have actually been worse on the other side. But thank you very much for the $20 combined. Brendan Crespin, big support, big super chats. Thank you very much. God bless you all for the support. Abby for $20 says, thank you very much for the $20, Abby. I gotta keep getting excited, okay? Thank you very much for the $20. Abby says there was tribalism between rival Native American tribes, and that has existed before Europeans discovered America. Thank you very much for the $20, Abby. Big super chat, and it is true, right? This idea that they were a bunch of like peace-loving hippies until the Europeans showed up, it's just ridiculous. It's nonsense, and it's not true at all. Thank you very much for the $20. Abby, appreciate it. God bless you. Big support. Burgundy Blue for $20 says, great arguments, Vince, especially regarding the Lakota Sioux. The U.S. did commit genocide by deporting the 5 civilized tribes, but aside from that, the Americans have generally preferred natives to be integrated with the country. Thank you very much for the $20, Burgundy Blue, big super chat. God bless you. Appreciate the support. And it is true, the Lakota Sioux were incredibly brutal. An incredibly brutal tribe historically. Zeb Boykin for $5 says the majority of Indians have been given a lot of reparations in land, but it's not enough and it never will be. Thank you very much for the $5, Zeb Boykin, and this is true, right? This is true. They actually have been given quite a few reparations, and you look at the current state of a lot of these native reservations. At what point are you going to take responsibility? Because you go on these reservations, their only source of income is the casino. They can't build functional, stable anything. They can't create economies. They can't. And here's the thing, too, right? Native American reservations don't have any of the economic regulations that, a lot of just places in America do, right? And so when you really think about it, there's actually a lot of leeway there to undercut the market, really jumpstart some really strong economic zones on these reservations, and they just are not doing it. But then activists like Lakota Man will sit there and complain, oh, white people, blah, 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 this and that. Thank you very much for the $5, Zeb Boykin. Let's continue catching up with the super chats here. And by the way, I'm going to end the stream in less than 10 minutes here, so if you want to send in one, get it in now so we can, get that. The bar is closing. Last call. Here we go. Christopher for $20. Big donation from Christopher. Thank you very much, Christopher. God bless you. Says, I've been saying for a long time that European colonization advanced many parts of the world. After World War II, when the Europeans left places like Asia and Africa, civil wars happened and satanic dictators took over, and also economic development stalled and oftentimes reversed itself. Thank you very much for the $20, Christopher, and this is so true. I mean, look at a place like Zimbabwe. That's a perfect example of it, right? Historically, I believe it was a British colony, correct? And then Europeans ran sort of the nation of Rhodesia. And actually, at the time, Rhodesia was one of the strongest economic countries in Africa. It was doing very well for itself. And then, the Rhodesians got driven out. And then Robert Mugabe, this black supremacist leftist dictator, took over Zimbabwe, and he started doing reparations. He started taking land away from white farmers and redistributing the land to all the Africans, all the black people, and that actually just screwed up the entire Zimbabwe economy. And then he did all these stupid things, and next thing you knew, Zimbabwe had one of the highest inflation rates in the world. I believe it's 95 times. It has a 95 time X inflation rate. Absolutely crazy. Thank you for the $20, Christopher. And again, yeah, this is objectively true, right? We can point, oh, I don't like this practice or that practice, and it is true. But, the quote unquote brutalities committed by historic colonists are not exclusive ever. None of them were ever exclusive to, European people. But when you actually look at the legacy of the positive things that were brought to those places, how could you really argue otherwise? Thank you very much for the $20. Big donation. Appreciate it. Brendan Crespin for another $10. Big support from Brendan Crespin. Appreciate you, man. God bless you. Says, I'm talking mainly about the slavery standpoint in that, but can also agree where you are coming from, Vince. God bless you and the work you are doing. Thank you very much, Brendan Crespin. God bless you too. I appreciate it. Thank you for the $10. Thank you for the support tonight. Big shout out. Elite Mythical says, who is our best allied country from a paleo-conservative perspective? Well, So I guess you're asking like who in terms of being ideologically aligned with. It's probably like the Eastern European conservative countries that are, you know, obviously not Russia, because Russia we obviously have created a rivalry with for 20 or so years, and then, you know, not Ukraine, because Ukraine's not the most like socially conservative, quote unquote, whatever. Although it is probably much more socially conservative than America. You guys ever think about that? You know, it's not exactly like the based right-wing state that you know, maybe like Poland. The answer I would say is Poland and Hungary, right? From a paleocon, from an ideological perspective. Now, functionally speaking, our best ally is probably just the UK, because they're like a fellow military force. But to answer your question, those are the two answers I would probably give there. But you guys ever think about that? It's like, and now you notice ever since they're relying on America for support, like Zelensky even like dresses differently and acts differently, and they're talking about legalizing gay marriage now in Ukraine. Isn't that kind of interesting? It's like he, you know, and I will give Zelensky credit for this, okay? Now, when he goes on and just ridicules America first and attacks Americans for not sending enough money, I find it all pretentious. But he does, and I will give him credit for this, he does kind of understand the audience he's trying to get money from. He's not trying to get money from me, Donald Trump, or whatever. He understands who he's asking to give him money is Joe Biden, and up until, you know, January 2022, an entirely Democrat-controlled Congress. And so, you know, to his own credit, he does kind of know how to speak to libs, and it is so true. All right, let's check some more super chats here. Zorkoth says, I'm not going to read the first part. I would like to hear an answer to Burgundy's question. Okay, here we go. Burgundy Blue for $20 says, great stream, Vince. What are your thoughts on the three major political movements? Liberal democracy / classical liberalism, Marxist socialism, and fascism all had large followings. Why do you think people were drawn to them? Well, the first two I think people are drawn to out of kind of the Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment sense of idealism, right? Now, people historically have been driven to fascism out of it's a reactionary ideology, right? So they were driven to fascism out of an anger at large, in most cases, the stagnations of liberal democracy and classical liberalism, etc., and sometimes socialism and Marxism too, right? That's kind of more so the case in Italy. I don't think that fascism necessarily is the whole scale solution to such problems, right? I understand, and this is the thing, right? I understand the sentiments that drive people towards fascism, okay? Like you know, these different historical dictators never sprung out of nowhere. But there are criticisms I have of fascism. I think, you know, the sort of like third positionist, very often, not always, but very often like atheistic, materialistic, scientific worldview that especially like National Socialism springs out of is just not truly conservative and not a solution, not a Christian solution. But that's sort of the cause of fascism. The first two is idealism. Thank you very much for the $20, Burgundy Blue. Can we stop getting super chats about fascism, chat? Okay. Not that I'm scared to talk about it, but you guys just want to get me demonetized. Okay, our guy earlier, violence and fashion. Guys, we're trying to stay on YouTube. Okay. Can we do that? Can we ask them on members chats or something? I'll answer the questions, but this is true. Jonathan Fields for $10 says, another awesome video, Vince. God bless you. Have a great night. Thank you very much, Jonathan Fields, for the $10. And last super chat of the night here before we wrap up, unless we get one last second one. Surfing Cowboy for $5 says, don't always agree with you, Vince, but you are genuine, which I wholeheartedly support. Same with Sav. Happy to see you two collaborating. Thank you very much, Surfing Cowboy, for the $5. All right. If that is all the super chats tonight, ladies and gentlemen, then I will wrap up the stream here. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to leave a like before you go. Let's see, 169 likes. Be sure to get us to 200 likes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Great episode. We will be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time for the Friday night show. Be sure to join us then. And until next time, folks, have a very good night. Remember to leave a like before you go. Alpha moves only. God bless and peace.